It was a chilly fall evening in Burlington when my parents called a family dinner. I'm Marcia Morgan, 26, a software developer with a decent salary still living at home to save for my own place. For 2 years, I'd been the one footing the bill for my younger brother laptop clothes, even tutors to get him into a fancy private med school. I thought I was doing my part helping out the family, but that night, everything changed. Over roasted chicken and tense silence, my dad leaned forward, his voice cold. Marcia, we need you to cover your brother's tuition. $50,000 a year. I froze fork halfway to my mouth. I'd already given so much, how could they ask for more? I took a deep breath and said no. I needed to focus on my own future. That's when my mom's face twisted. If you don't help your brother, you're no longer our child, she spat. The words hit like a slap. My dad nodded, doubling down. Family steps up, Marcia. You're letting us down. I tried to argue, but they shut me out, their voices rising. My brother just sat there, avoiding my eyes. I left the table, heart pounding, knowing this was only the start. They thought I'd cave, but they were wrong. What they did next would unravel secrets I never saw coming. If you've ever been blindsided by family demands, hit subscribe and drop your story in the comments. Let's talk about it. The next morning, I woke up to an empty driveway. My Ford Mustang, the car my parents gave me when I graduated college, was gone. I stood frozen on the porch, staring at the bare pavement where my pride and joy used to sit. My hands trembled as I marched back into the house, heart pounding with a mix of shock and fury. I found my parents in the kitchen, sipping coffee like nothing had happened. "Where's my car?" I demanded, my voice sharp. My father, Carl Morgan, didn't even look up from his mug. "We sold it," he said, his tone flat like he was discussing the weather. "Your brother's tuition isn't cheap, Marcia. We needed the money." My mother, Lois Morgan, stood by the counter, arms crossed tightly. "You're so ungrateful," she snapped, her eyes narrowing. "After all we've done, you won't even help your brother." I felt like I'd been punched. That Mustang was registered in Dad's name, sure, but they'd called it mine, a reward for my hard work. Now it was gone, sold behind my back to fund my brother's med school dreams. I turned to my brother, Ian Morgan, slouched at the table, scrolling on his phone like he didn't have a care in the world. "Did you know about this?" I asked, my voice cracking. He shrugged, not bothering to look up. "It's for my future, Marcia. You've got a job. You'll get over it." His indifference cut deeper than Mom's words. For 2 years, I'd paid for his laptop, his textbooks, his tutors, thousands of dollars to help him get into that fancy private med school. And now they expected me to keep giving, no questions asked. "I'm not paying for his tuition," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady despite the anger boiling inside. "I've done enough." Dad's face hardened, his coffee mug hitting the table with a thud. "If you're not contributing, you're out of this house," he said, his tone cold and final. Mom nodded, her expression like stone. "We mean it, Marcia. Step up or get out." I wanted to scream, to throw something, but I clenched my fists and stayed silent. I wasn't ready to leave, not yet. I needed time to figure out my next move. Back in my room, I locked the door and pulled up my bank account on my laptop. My savings were solid. Years of coding gigs had built up a decent nest egg, about $30,000. But moving out in Burlington wasn't cheap. A one-bedroom apartment ran at least $2,000 a month, plus a deposit, utilities, and maybe a new car to replace the one they stole. I wasn't broke, but I wasn't flush enough to walk away today. The betrayal burned like a fire in my chest. My parents saw me as a bank account, not a daughter. Ian's shrug replayed in my mind, his casual dismissal twisting the knife. I'd been the good sister, the one who always stepped up, but they treated me like I owed them everything. I spent the afternoon scouring rental listings online, bookmarking apartments near my office in downtown Burlington. I texted a coworker, Jen, asking if she knew anyone with a spare room for a short-term crash if things got worse. She replied quickly, offering her couch for a week if I needed it. I thanked her, my fingers hovering over the keyboard as I debated calling a realtor. Every step felt heavy, like I was planning an escape from my own family. I kept seeing Dad's cold stare, Mom's accusing glare, Ian's careless shrug. They thought I'd cave hand over my paycheck to keep the peace. But I was done being their ATM. I didn't know what they'd pull next, but I was already mapping my way out. I closed my laptop, my resolve hardening. I'd find a way to leave no matter what it took. A week later, the tension in the house was unbearable. Every glance from my parents felt like a silent accusation, and I avoided them as much as I could. I'd kept quiet since they sold my car, but I knew they weren't done pushing. One evening, my father called a family meeting. I walked into the living room, my stomach tight, and saw him at the head of the table with a stack of papers. Dad cleared his throat, his voice calm but heavy. "Marcia, we're counting on you for $10,000 for your brother's tuition." He slid a contract across the table, a formal document demanding I commit to paying for Ian's med school. My mother sat beside him, her eyes fixed on me. "Your brother needs you," she said softly, her tone dripping with expectation. I stared at the contract, my hands clenching. $10,000. I'd already spent thousands on my brother, his laptop, his books, his tutors. Now they wanted me to sign away my savings like I owed them. My sister Heidi Morgan was there too, sitting across from me. At 28, she managed a retail store and usually stayed out of family drama, but her frown deepened as she looked at Dad. "This feels rushed," she said, her voice careful. "Why are we pushing Marcia instead of exploring loans for Ian?" Dad's jaw tightened. "Your brother's future matters, Heidi. Marcia has the means." I caught my sister's glance, a spark of doubt in her eyes. She wasn't buying Dad's story, and neither was I. My phone buzzed, breaking the silence. A text from my brother. "You're abandoning me, Marcia. How could you?" I gripped the phone, anger flaring. Ian's words hurt, but his entitlement hurt more. He'd never thanked me for all I'd done, and now he was guilt-tripping me. I set the phone down and faced my parents. "I'm not signing this," I said, my voice steady. "His tuition is your responsibility, not mine." Dad leaned forward, his tone sharper. "We're a family, Marcia. You can't just walk away," Mom added. "You're letting him down." I shook my head, pushing the contract back. "I've given enough," I said, my heart racing. "I'm done being your solution." Heidi stayed quiet, but her eyes followed me as I left the room, her doubt lingering like a question mark. Back in my bedroom, I felt trapped, the pressure from Dad's demands and Ian's texts closing in. I opened my laptop, not to search for apartments this time, but to research bank loans for a new car. My savings, about $30,000, could cover a down payment, but replacing my Mustang would stretch me thin. I also pulled up Vermont's tenant laws, reading about deposits and leases to prepare for moving out. The more I read, the more I realized how unprepared I was to leave immediately. Dad's secrecy about the money, Heidi's suspicion, it all pointed to something bigger. I wasn't just fighting for my savings, I was fighting for the truth. I closed my laptop, my resolve strengthening. I'd figure out what Dad was hiding no matter what. That night, I stayed up late texting Chloe for advice. My sister's doubts from the family meeting gnawed at me, her question about why Dad was so obsessed with my money instead of loans. Something felt off, and I couldn't shake it. I messaged Chloe Bennett, my 26-year-old coworker and a financial analyst with a sharp eye for numbers. "Can you check into my family's finances?" I asked. "Heidi thinks Dad's hiding something." Chloe responded quickly. "Got any documents I can start there?" I remembered a bank statement I'd found in the mail, mistakenly addressed to Dad but sent to our house. My hands shook as I scanned the pages and sent them to Chloe, hoping for answers. The next day, Chloe called during my lunch break. "Marcia, this is big," she said, her voice tense. "Your dad transferred $200,000 to someone named Vance Bennett last year." "Who is he?" My stomach sank. Vance Bennett. The name was unfamiliar. That kind of money dwarfed my car's sale or Ian's tuition. "Can you dig deeper?" I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. Chloe agreed to trace the transfers, searching for patterns in Dad's accounts. I hung up my thoughts, spiraling. Who was Vance, and why was Dad sending him so much money? That evening, I called my father to confront him. "Dad, who's Vance Bennett?" I asked, keeping my voice even. There was a long pause, then a sigh. "It's complicated, Marcia," he said, his tone evasive. "Just focus on your brother's future." I pushed, mentioning the $200,000, but he cut me off. "This isn't your concern," he snapped and ended the call. His deflection only deepened my suspicion. Dad wasn't just hiding something, he was burying it. I felt a chill, certain this secret was bigger than I'd imagined. I texted my sister asking if she knew anything about Vance. Heidi suggested we meet at a coffee shop near her store. Over cappuccinos, she leaned in, her voice low. "A while back, Dad mentioned a debt he had to clear," she said. "He brushed it off when I asked, so I thought it was about the mortgage. Now I'm not sure." Her eyes met mine, mirroring my unease. "Could it be tied to that money?" she asked. I nodded, my jaw tight. It has to be. Dad's keeping us in the dark. Back home, I couldn't sleep, my mind fixed on Vance Bennett. I searched his name online, finding a LinkedIn profile for a 29-year-old bank employee in a nearby town. His photo showed a man with no family resemblance, but the name matched Chloe's discovery. Why was Dad sending him so much? Was it blackmail? Alone, I dismissed business deals. Dad, a retired accountant, wasn't that kind of player. The more I thought, the more it felt like a long-buried secret. I messaged Chloe asking her to cross-check Vance's name with public records. She agreed, cautioning me, "Big money like this usually means trouble." The next morning, I sat at my desk staring at my laptop. Chloe's email detailed more transfers, smaller sums to Vance over years, all from Dad's personal account, not the family's joint one. Why hide it from Mom? I called Heidi, updating her. "He's keeping this from everyone," I said, frustration rising. My sister paused, then said, "Marcia, you need to find Vance. If Dad won't talk, he might." I agreed, my resolve hardening. Whoever Vance Bennett was, he held the key to Dad's secrets. I'd track him down and uncover the truth, no matter what it cost. The next day, I went to a quiet neighborhood outside Burlington. My hands gripped the steering wheel of my coworker's borrowed car, my pulse racing as I followed the address Chloe had found for Vance Bennett. I pulled up to a modest house with a neat lawn, my stomach churning with nerves. I needed to know the truth about my father's secrets. I walked to the door, took a deep breath, and knocked. A man answered, tall, 29, with no resemblance to my family. "Vance." I asked, my voice steady. He nodded, his expression cautious. "I'm Marcia. We need to talk about my father." Vance invited me inside, his demeanor guarded. We sat in his small living room, and I cut to the chase. "Why did my father send you $200,000? His eyes widened, then softened with a mix of pain and resignation. "You don't know," he said quietly. "I'm Vance Bennett, your father's son, from before he married your mom." My heart stopped. My father's son, Vance, explained. Carl had been with his mother when he was 23, but abandoned them when Vance was born. His mother raised him alone, scraping by until she passed away last year. "He started sending money a few years ago," Vance said, his voice edged with bitterness. "Said it was to make up for it. I never asked for it." I leaned forward, my mind spinning. Make up for it? Did that include money from selling my car? Vance looked confused, so I explained how my Ford Mustang was sold without my consent. His face darkened. "He sent me $20,000 last week," he admitted. "I didn't know it was from your car." My chest tightened, a wave of nausea hitting me. That was my car. My freedom funneled into Dad's attempt to erase his guilt. I felt betrayed, not just by him, but by the lies that had shaped our family. I left Vance's house, my thoughts in chaos. I called my sister, asking her to meet me at a diner near her store. Heidi arrived, her face tense with concern. "What happened?" she asked. I told her everything: Vance's dad's secret son, the money, my car. Her jaw dropped, then tightened with anger. He's been using our family's money to cover his past, she said, her voice low. I knew he was hiding something but a son. She paused, her eyes locked on mine. You need to keep digging, Marcia. Dad's been lying to us all. We sat in the diner piecing together the fragments. Heidi recalled Dad's late-night calls, his vague references to old obligations. She'd thought it was about taxes or the house, but now it clicked. He's been draining us for years, she said, shaking her head, and making you pay for it. Her support grounded me, but the sting of Dad's deception cut deeper. He'd hidden a son, lied to us, and used my car to fund his atonement. I wasn't just angry, I was done being his tool. That night, back in my room, I sat on my bed staring at the wall. Vance's words echoed in my head. My father had another life, one he'd buried while expecting me to sacrifice for Ian. The $20,000 from my car was a small piece of the $200,000 he'd sent Vance, but it was my piece. My trust in Dad was shattered, replaced by a burning need for answers. I texted Chloe thanking her for the lead and started planning my next steps. Whatever else Dad was hiding, I'd uncover it before I left this family for good. Back at my motel, an envelope appeared under my door. I'd moved out 2 days ago, renting a cheap room to escape the suffocating tension at home. My hands trembled as I picked up the plain white envelope, my father's handwriting scrawled across the front. Inside, I found a letter from Carl Morgan along with a stack of documents. My breath caught as I read his words, an admission that Vance was his son, born before he married Mom. Attached were bank records showing he'd transferred $200,000 to Vance, records that also revealed he'd dodged taxes on the transfers, hiding them from the IRS. My head spun. My father wasn't just deceitful, he was breaking the law. I needed perspective, so I drove to Burlington to visit my grandparents, Ralph Morgan and Doris Morgan. Their cozy house smelled of fresh coffee, a stark contrast to the chaos I'd left behind. Sitting at their kitchen table, I poured out everything Vance. The money, the car, the tax evasion. Grandma's eyes softened with concern, but Grandpa's face hardened. Your father's been manipulating you all, he said, his voice gruff. Those transfers are serious. The IRS doesn't mess around with unreported income like that. Grandma nodded, placing a hand on mine. You need to report this, Marcia, she said gently. Not for revenge, but to stop him from hurting you further. Their words grounded me, giving me clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. Back at the motel, I called my brother for one last conversation. Ian, did you know about Vance? I asked, my voice steady. He scoffed, his tone bitter. You're so selfish, Marcia, he said, digging up Dad's past like a betrayer. He's trying to fix things, and you're tearing us apart. His words stung, but they didn't sway me. Ian was choosing Dad's lies over the truth, and I was done pleading. You're wrong, I said, my voice cold. Dad's been stealing from us, and you're defending him. I hung up, my heart heavy but resolute. Ian's loyalty to Dad was his choice, not my burden. The next morning, I gathered the documents and drove to the local IRS office. My hands shook as I submitted the evidence of my father's tax evasion, detailing the $200,000 he'd hidden. The agent assured me they'd investigate, and I felt a weight lift even as guilt gnawed at me. This wasn't just about the money or my car, it was about breaking free from years of manipulation. Back at the motel, I sat on the lumpy bed and wrote a final message to my father, mother, and Ian. I'm done. I can't trust you anymore. Don't contact me. I sent it, my fingers trembling, then blocked their numbers. The silence that followed was deafening but liberating. That evening, I unpacked my few belongings in the motel room, a laptop, some clothes, a photo of me and Heidi from happier times. I'd found a small apartment to rent starting next month, and my job as a coder gave me enough to start over. The pain of cutting ties with my family lingered, a dull ache in my chest. They'd sold my car, demanded my savings, hidden a brother, and lied about it all. But as I looked out the motel window at the Burlington skyline, I felt a spark of freedom. I was no longer their pawn. For the first time, I was choosing myself, even if it hurt. 6 months later, I was settling into my new apartment in Burlington. The small one-bedroom with its hardwood floors and view of Lake Champlain felt like a sanctuary after the chaos of my family's betrayal. I'd cut ties with my father, mother, and brother, and though the pain lingered, I was building a life on my own terms. News from home trickled in through local gossip, and it wasn't pretty. The IRS had launched a full investigation into Carl and Lois Morgan for tax evasion tied to the $200,000 they'd sent to Vance. Their reputation in Burlington's tight-knit community crumbled. Neighbors who once admired their charity work now whispered about their deceit. My brother faced his own fallout. The medical school revoked Ian's scholarship when the scandal broke, citing the family's financial misconduct. He was forced to take out hefty student loans to cover his tuition, a burden he'd avoided thanks to my sacrifices. Part of me felt a pang of guilt. He was still my brother, but his choice to defend Dad's lies had driven a wedge between us. I'd learned the hard way that enabling their manipulation only deepened the damage. I focused on rebuilding. I'd used part of my savings to buy a used Toyota Corolla, a reliable silver sedan that felt like a fresh start after losing my Mustang. At work, my coding skills earned me a promotion to lead developer with a raise that steadied my finances. On weekends, I discovered a new passion: hiking the Green Mountains. The trails, with their rugged paths and sweeping views, gave me a sense of freedom I'd never known. Each step up those peaks felt like shedding the weight of my family's expectations. One morning, I opened my laptop to find an email from my sister. Heidi wrote, her words heavy with regret. "I was wrong to stay neutral, Marcia. I should have stood up for you sooner. I'm sorry." Her apology stirred mixed feelings. I appreciated her honesty, but the wounds were still raw. She'd doubted Dad's actions in the end, but her initial silence had let me face the worst alone. I typed a brief reply. "Thanks for reaching out, Heidi. I need time." I hit send, my heart heavy but firm. I'd cut contact with my father, mother, and brother completely, and I wasn't ready to open that door with my sister either. Boundaries were my shield now, and I wasn't lowering them yet. As I sat in my apartment, sipping coffee and watching the sunrise, I reflected on everything. My father's secret son, the stolen money, the lies they'd torn our family apart. But they'd also taught me something vital. Family doesn't justify manipulation. Setting boundaries is true strength. I'd spent years bending to their demands, thinking it was love, but real love doesn't demand sacrifice at the cost of self. By walking away, I'd reclaimed my life, even if it meant standing alone. To everyone who's followed this story, thank you for listening to the end. It's been a journey of pain, discovery, and growth, and I'm grateful for your time. If this resonates with you, please share your thoughts. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? How did you find the strength to choose yourself? Your stories matter, and I'd love to hear them.